This is the Ace Founder Podcast.
Welcome to the show, Sheila. It's an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you. No, super excited to be here. Thanks you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on. And today we're going to be diving into the world of HR. And I've always wanted to have, like I was saying before we started recording, I've always wanted to have somebody to come and chat about HR on the show. I've never had that. So I'm really excited about this and having somebody to share wisdom when it comes to hiring in the tech world. But before we dive in, I always like to leave it up to my guests to introduce themselves because I feel you're going to do a better job than I do. So, could you tell us a little bit more about you and the work you do?
Yeah, so my name is Sheila Holley. I've been in HR for 15 years. And what I do is I help founders, leaders, executives, C-suites really unlock freedom within their capacity by helping them uncover risk, being their strategic advisor, solving the issues they don't see so that they can scale and grow their businesses. And like I said, I've been doing this for 15 years in the med tech, professional services, construction, and engineering industry and manufacturing industry. And, it's been great. I've had success in growing and seeing startups start from conception to commercialization and working in the big Fortune 500s. So I know what it takes to get our leaders and businesses to success. And so super excited to have had that success. And now I am combining the HR and safety world and offering that success and advisory to small to mid-sized businesses. And so super excited about that.
That is so cool. You got like an extensive background in HR, which is awesome. Tell us a little bit more about Trinity Consulting or Trinity City Consulting. First of all,
Yes.
how did that name come up? I'm always curious. Yeah.
It came about really my background. I went from being in customer service to being an HR executive very
Mm,
quickly and getting to the top. It really took a lot. And so my faith was rooted in that. And
mm,
so I wanted to bring my faith to the city while I'm consulting. Um,
uh,
really, and that's how the name came about. And so combining what I do, HR, and my husband, we actually partner together in
mm.
this business. That's how we got Trinity City Consulting and the HR and safety component together.
That is so cool. Whenever I like to hear the background of the names because founders tend to have so really cool stories behind yours. I think yours like is the first the religious background
Yeah, yeah,
name
yeah.
I've come across. So that is very interesting. And how has the journey been for you since you started this company?
It's been quite the journey. I started
Okay.
this organization, this company when the whole world shut down during COVID.
Ah.
And initially, I was providing career coaching support
Mm,
for those who were looking to earn six figures and learning to get unstuck from the careers that they were in. And so I started that, and then I was like, you know what, I can do this in real life and help smaller organizations. And I began to help nonprofits
mm,
and other organizations, smaller organizations during the COVID time. And so, yeah, that's kind of where the passion came from.
mm. Very, very cool. And diving deeper into what you do, is it like, are you like some kind of a matchmaker? Is it like a founder needs a position filled and they hire you to find the person to fill that position? Or how does the details work, I guess?
Well, no, that's a great question. So it's more of there's a risk assessment that I offer, and
Okay.
sometimes the founders or leaders that meet me are in a place where they have their hands in multiple pots. So they're
Mm,
doing HR, or someone on their leadership team is doing HR, and they really don't know what they're doing. They just know that they're moving. And sometimes we move so quick, we don't understand that the risk that is entailing in that movement. And so the founders that come to me, they're struggling with their capacity and they want to grow, but they're stuck, and they're probably sitting on thousands of dollars in risk, people risk,
Mm.
workplace risk, compliance risk, um, people risk, like all of the infrastructure risk. And so those are the leaders and the founders that come to me, and I help them get unstuck, and I help them uncover their capacity by taking that part away from them and building infrastructures and people systems that actually work to mitigate risk before they start spending thousands and thousands of dollars.
Very, very interesting. Can you give us like an example, a particular example of
Yeah.
that? Because of, when you say HR, it's like this very broad thing. But yeah, give us like an example of how what the founder will be struggling with and how you actually help them out.
Yeah, well, most founders really commonly lose money within their teams, like I said, without even realizing it. So, for example, I had a founder that came to me that was doing the HR work, or actually their CFO was doing work HR work, which they weren't hired or equipped to do. And so their
Mm.
productivity was dropping. They were late on deadlines. Everyone on the leadership team was getting frustrated, and they were paying for the output that they weren't getting. So what I did was I came in, I did a audit to assess what their needs were, what they were spending more time on, what were their people structures, where were their compliance gaps. I took that away and built a system that they could use, which was automated because AI is big now. And so partnered that with building their infrastructure. And now instead of their CFO doing it, I come in, I'm working, doing what they were doing, but now their productivity is increasing. Now the CFO is no longer late on deadlines. They can delegate, and I'm building this infrastructure so that when they get to that point, they can bring someone in full time to help them basically sit in that infrastructure that was built, and it's just plug and play. So they're no longer doing more work for less money. They're actually maximizing their capacity, and they're gaining clarity too, in terms of role structure. And so now they can delegate more and scale the business and focus on growing the organization.
That makes so much sense, and that's a trend I'm noticing. Like I've interviewed a bunch of fractional professionals, and one trend I'm noticing is that they don't necessarily come in to be in that position forever. They come in, they build, and then get you to the point where you can now hire your own person. So that's
Right.
very, very interesting. And you talk about fractional hiring. I know there's a bunch of founders that probably don't even know what that term is or if they even need one in the first place.
Yeah.
Could you define or could you explain what that is and why a founder might actually need to hire fractionally, if that's the right term?
Yeah. I think that's good. I actually wrote a blog about this on my website. But fractional hiring is where you bring someone in that's experienced, that knows the work, knows the function, and you bring them in to build because you're not ready to hire a full-time person, but a fractional hire is bringing someone in who's more experienced, like I said, who knows the work, they know the infrastructure, and they can build without spending all the money on a full-time hire. I mean, for example,
Mm.
let's say a full-time HR hire, generally generally speaking, will cost roughly around an executive hire would cost around, close to 200, 300,000. A fractional
Ooh.
hire is just that you hire a fractional person with the same expertise for a fraction of the cost to get you where you need to go. Especially for founders and small businesses, they don't have that type of capital, and so that's where fractional hiring comes in. We come in, we do the job faster, quicker, and for less money than a full-time hire because again, fractional roles are just that. They're fractional, for a fraction of the cost. They're not benefits. You don't give them benefits. You don't give them all of the benefits that a full-time hire would necessarily have.
That makes a lot of sense. You're spot on. Like, but that's crazy though. 200 grand a year for a full time HR. Not many startups can afford that kind of money. So having a fractional somebody come in and do some parts of it, doing
Right,
what you need basically.
right.
That makes a lot of sense. So you talk about founders losing money within their teams. Could you explain more or dive more into that? And could you share some common ways or common places where founders are actually losing money within their teams?
Yeah, one of the things that, or one of the areas I would say, if I'm honest, is poor management habits. And I'm not saying that the founders have poor management habits, but
Mm,
what in my experience, a lot of leaders or founders kind of avoid hard conversations, especially in a startup organization. A lot of the founders or leaders are wearing multiple hats. And so
mm,
avoiding those hard conversations because you do have to work within a smaller environment is hard. There's also unclear expectations, inconsistent accountability, and all of that leads to underperformance that really drains money, and it's a quiet draining, and it's month after month where you don't realize it. I had an example where I was managing or came into an organization, and the managers hadn't had any one-on-ones with their team members. Um, and that was killing the productivity because they were poor performers and there was no documentation. And now when I get in, the leader is saying, I want to let this individual go. Well, we got to start from ground zero. So what that means is now we have to spend money on something that's not serving the organization anymore because we failed to manage well. And so one of the things that I did was I set up a SOP, so a scope of procedures, a scope of work, so that the managers knew exactly what to do in situations like
mm.
this. So that way we don't spend money on individuals that are not performing and losing productivity. So did that and also created a manager training so that way going forward, anytime there's a new manager that's hired, they know what to expect. And this is what I mean when I said earlier, building structures and infrastructure for longevity, not just for right now. And that's the beauty of fractional as well.
Very, very cool. Very, very. You got me thinking there, like of when you work with the startups, how big, on average, do you tend to find their sizes or their team size is before they need somebody like you?
Well, I think from my experience, when they start at 10 or more team members, that's when things start to get a little dicey. Um,
Mm,
that's when the capacity starts to stretch. That's where things start to get unclear. That's where compliance and process gaps start.
mm,
And this is one of the areas that founders underestimate the most. So you can fly under the radar so much, but depending on where you are in the world, there could be misclassification of wages, lack of
mm.
documentation, like I said earlier, and that's where you want to start and bring someone in. So once you have the foundation set, that's what we do. We set the foundation so that way you build from there. It's harder when you come in or you bring someone like me in at over 25 because that's when things start to get a little bit more crazy. And it's a lot more work for the person that comes in.
Very, very cool. And when say they bring in somebody like you, I'm guessing it's not to, like you said. Actually, maybe this will help. Like if you explain what kind of roles do you tend? I guess when the founder is handling HR, is handling the hiring, the complaints, like you said, compliance, all that good stuff. But what kind of task and activities do you help them with? I guess.
Yeah. I help them with organizing the process. I help
Mm,
them with seeing where the gaps are
mm,
and identifying risk. And so that's putting a number on it, because
Mm,
what I found as I go through working with founders is that sometimes they think they could sweep it under the rug and they're like, oh, we'll deal with it later. And
yeah.
all of a sudden, they get an email saying that they're getting sued. And it's like,
Oh,
okay, so what I do is I say, hey, give me all your people processes, give me everything, your compliance, your people performance, your culture, give me all of that, your handbooks. Some don't even have handbooks. And if
yeah.
they do, they're outdated. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I say, give me all of that. I'll do an audit and I'll show you where your gaps are and what it could cost you and what is currently costing
Uh,
you, right? Because sometimes founders don't understand that, well, sometimes they think they have a revenue problem, let's be honest. And a lot of times it's their people system that's the issue. So I say, give
mm,
me all of that. I'll do inventory. I'll tell you what it's costing you. And then I come up with a plan to save them right now and moving forward. And so that's really how that works.
that makes a lot of sense. That clarifies that because I was thinking like they had this team and they won't necessarily know, like you said, what's costing them, or maybe if they're paying too much here, or even if they're risky, or how risky this is. Very, very interesting. Have you ever worked with a company that this was like, you know what, would you come and work with us? Or, has a situation ever, right?
Where a company asked for me to come work with them.
Yeah, full time. Because I could see like passing this on to somebody else might be another. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I have, and
okay.
in some cases, depending on like the workload,
Mm,
I can for a period of time. But what I do is I come in, I help set them up so they can hire someone full time. So
what is
I help them identify what they need, because
okay?
HR is not the same everywhere. And with organizations that are starting up, they need a strategic HR partner. And that's what I serve. So, and
Okay.
that's what I provide. And so my this is my theory, and it's worked for me so far, but a strategic HR advisor or executive or professional can find and identify another strategic HR professional. Also, if they need someone more tactical, a strategic individual can find someone that's more tactical. It's almost like you can go down, but sometimes you can't go up. And so I find myself really helping and partnering with the founders to identify what they need long term. So, to answer your question, sometimes I can, and what I do is I offer an embedded model where I am sitting with the founders, I'm sitting with their executive team, I'm acting as a CHRO or a VP at the top level. And then I'm embedded. So, what that means, they can call on me anytime they need me as if I'm hired with them, but it's only for a certain amount of hours. And that's the beauty of it. You don't have to pay the full time.
And save yourself a lot of money in the process. So
Yeah.
yeah, makes a lot of. I think this fractional business model. I think that's the future. It's where maybe it's the present, but I'm seeing a lot of fraction, a lot of fractional professionals at the moment, and I think it makes a lot of sense because sometimes, like firing somebody, it's a headache to fire somebody. You have to go through all this, but with a fractional person, you can just let them go. Interesting. Do you also, let's say a founder hires you and they need to hire somebody, maybe you haven't got to creating that process for them. How does that work? How would that work? Do you help with hiring other people, or what does that look like?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely come in and see what they need,
Mm-hmm.
identify the areas that have gaps,
Mm,
and really, I do the job descriptions, and I also
okay.
specialize in the market pay, so identifying the
Mm,
market, and I really dig in partner with the founders to see exactly what they
What
need,
they need. Yeah.
um, what their goals are, and where they're trying to go to make sure that we hone in on what is going to be a long term solution. And so I don't hire or partner with founders to hire, like if they
Mm.
hire me, I don't partner with them to hire a short term fix because then that doesn't do the job. I work with them to make sure they find, it's like being a matchmaker. I work with them to make sure they find their long term needs
Person.
and someone that can
Yeah.
grow with the organization.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Because as you're talking, I'm thinking HR is many things. It's pension, it's holidays, it's
Yeah.
stuff, it's all this stuff, and I see. It makes sense. Sheila, this has been a wonderful, wonderful chat. I do have one more question for you, though. Like actually, two. Like in terms of sporting leagues and stuff like that. Is there anything that a founder you'd advise? How the founder know they need somebody like you, basically, like because it's easy to get stuck into things, and like you said, having his hands full. So I guess the question I'm asking is, how would the founder know? It's time I need to get the HR person.
Yeah. Well, when they start being a firefighter, right, they start throwing more tools at things to fix them or more people to
Mm,
cover the work when actually they need clarity. And sometimes clarity comes from partnership. So if
mm,
a founder finds themselves spending more money and throwing more tools or more people to cover work or spending more money on software or different tools to mitigate the leak and just trying to band-aid it, that's where they know that they need someone like myself to help bring clarity, to get clear on, and really just to talk through what it looks like to stop the leak. Right? Oftentimes we band-aid it or we put our hand over it or we give it to someone else where we're not really solving the problem. So if we find ourselves or founders find themselves doing that, that's where you get me involved, right?
yeah.
That's where we come in and we do an audit on the team, kind of like I was saying, and their business system to see where's time being wasted. If they find themselves being overstretched, overworked, um, unclear decisions, things are falling through the cracks, or their managers, are just not figuring it out, that's where you need to call me and we can get in and do a clarity call and really understand where is the leak coming from and how can we fix it long term and not just patch it up.
I love that, and I'm sure a lot of founders watching this and listening to this probably resonate with that at the moment. So that's very interesting. And to wrap up, then, what's one key takeaway you'd want a founder watching this to do after, maybe not immediately, but after listening to this episode? What's one thing they could do to take away from this?
Well, I think the key takeaway that I would say is that people are either protecting your business or they're quietly costing you money. There's no
Mm,
neutral. So if you don't have structure, you don't have clarity or accountability in place, you're leaking. If you are stretching capacity, you're leaking.
mm,
Whether you see it or not, most times you're not seeing it. And the goal isn't more people. The goal is to gain clarity and get the right systems around the people that you already have. Because once you start with the foundation, that's the place where you build. It's not adding more stuff onto the foundation, it's building on what you already have.
love it. Powerful way to wrap up. I have to ask one more question. Have you ever fired somebody
Oh my
that
gosh.
you?
I mean, I don't even think that's the question. I think the question is, what was my hardest fire?
Well, yeah.
But yes, I've had a lot of tough
Decision.
terminations.
Oh wow.
Some they stick with you, and some you're just one and done. There's easy terminations, and there's not so easy. And if I could just give a little plug in for all the founders is to document. And if you don't know how to document, you should probably come and see me, because you can document and it be wrong documentation. And that's what makes the termination hard. And you can document the right way, and it'll make your life a little bit easier.
I see. So you can always refer to your document and say you didn't do this and you didn't do that.
Yeah,
Or you
yeah.
didn't.
And that's a huge
I see.
gap, honestly, that founders will really get stuck because, like I said, it's the people
Mm.
that cost the money. And if you're not sure where gaps are, I do have a simple, risk assessment that walks founders through where the gaps are. And um, yeah, they can grab that or connect with me through Trinity City Consulting. And I can also provide the link as well.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question. I'm glad you brought that up. You've talked a little bit about it. Do you want to dive deep into that? Like, is there like a like a freebie you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, so I do offer a growth risk assessment. I can share the link. And what the growth risk assessment is, it's for founders who maybe don't see where the hidden risks are. And so this assessment allows them to survey their organization. And through the survey, we're able to identify the hidden risk and come up with a way to mitigate those risks and build infrastructures in place and set infrastructures in place so that they don't go into those risks long term.
Brilliant. And we're gonna include all of. I'm sure you got a link to where they could go check out this assessment.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna link all of that in the show, and it's gonna be under this video as well. Sheila, this has been a wonderful chat. You've really given us some insight into the world of HR, fractional HR, and made me even start thinking of my own business as well. But yeah, so this is really good. Where can our viewers go check out or learn more about you, possibly work with you? What's the best way for them to
Yeah,
do that?
they can check me out on LinkedIn. I can include my LinkedIn as well, and then www.trinitycityconsulting.com. And so you can see everything that we do from HR to safety, how we save our clients, thousands of dollars, and in being a strategic HR advisor.
And we're gonna include all of that in the show notes, and for anybody that wants to check it out. Sheila, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you, and thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.